Well, hello again, and welcome to Wrestling Beyond the Pulpit with the Good News Gang. We're back for another week of discussion. Actually, it's part two, and we're picking up where we left off in our last episode. But before we get started, let me introduce myself and my tag team partners. I'm Pastor Matt West from Marble Memorial, UMC in Milan. I'm joined by Pastor Matt Osborne from Ishpeming Wesley, UMC. Pastor Kim Metzer from Hope UMC in Hastings, and a little piece there too. And we're going to round it off with Pastor Curtis Clark from Marysville UMC. And we are so glad that you've joined us once again to see what it is that we're wrestling with. But as I mentioned a moment ago, we're doing part two of a list that we started discussing last week. And it's coming off of an article from Karl Vaters, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Vaters, but he wrote an article about 10 things churches stopped during lockdowns that we don't need to restart. And so we went through the first 5 of that list last week. We discussed printed bulletins, in-person only services, outdated programs, pastors' office hours, and a crowded meeting calendar. And so we had some good discussion. Of course, before we recorded, we didn't think there was that much to talk about bulletins. But if you watched last week's episode, you noticed that particular one took up a little more time. That maybe, fortunately, there were some other ones that didn't take as much time, but apparently bulletins was a hot topic that we needed to discuss a little bit more. So with that, our first item on the list, or the next item on the list, is stand and greet time. So I'm curious, pre-COVID, did your churches do this? Have you stopped doing it? Are you not going to do it? Where do you stand on this this particular item?
We had stopped doing it long before pandemic. Encouraged people to instead linger after the service, have some coffee, talk to the people, hang out, and let that be the stand and greet time, if you will, or passing the peace. And of course, coming back after the pandemic didn't really encourage that. But now I've started encouraging people to, now that it's nicer out, we can spread out outside if we need to. We're not back to, we had coffee on Easter, but we're not back to coffee yet, although that's coming. Most of our churches either vaccinated and or had COVID. So the ones that come in person. So we're not letting down our guard. We're still wearing our masks, but it's loosening up a little bit. But I agree with Karl in that newcomers find it very awkward. Mm-hmm. I know when I have gone to a new church in the past, it's just, I'm an extrovert, so I'm okay with it, but it's, my husband wasn't necessarily okay with it. And just awkward. So.
I remember being at a church. We were on vacation in Myrtle Beach several years ago. Went to worship on Sunday, and we were down there. And this church had that time during their worship where they, welcomed visitors, and they had to stand up and then walked over with us, gave us a visitor bag, and it was awkward. Even as a pastor, with my family, it was awkward because I was just thinking of the people who, someone else who may have been there as a visitor, and just we don't do it. We don't, we welcome those who are visiting, but we don't make them stand up or anything. And so I'm not really sure. I have to go back and see what the meet and greet thing said on there. If it was more of a time afterwards, we're working back towards that fellowship time as well. It's coming, whether it's outside or inside. And I just saw that the mask restrictions are being lifted for outdoor gatherings of or under 100. So that's encouraging as well. So it's coming. I think that time afterwards is essential to the life of the church. But it can also become, and we've all probably experienced it, where it becomes very cliquish then too, where, and I think it's important too to still remember that even in that fellowship time, we're still in a time of worship too. And so it's, we don't necessarily want to be doing the business of the church. That's a time where we can share and encourage and pray and things like that too. So
Good point.
In the article, he states that it's one of those things that most churches have kept doing because they've always done it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really uncomfortable. I mean, for a lot of people who, I guess in some ways I'll equate it to, fellowship versus hospitality. It's easy for those that are there every week, to go and say, hey, how's it going? Versus somebody who's there for the first time. And I've heard of some churches, that'll be like, hey, first time visitors, raise your hand. Well, it's like, I don't think so, because then they're going to know,
I think for most of us, when we have a visitor in our church, everybody knows it.
Right, because we have the smaller congregation.
The goal is to not be sorry. I'm going to use this reference. I don't think anybody from there is going to be watching, but it's like going into an art van, where it's like as soon as
they're all closed, it's fine.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure, but it's that feeling of like, oh, first time guest.
Yeah, we're all on commission here, so that's
yes.
What committee can we sign you up for?
Right.
Good example. That is.
Oh,
you play an instrument? Great. We need you for the praise team. Can you start next week?
I'll share one thing too. We were at another church on vacation one time, and we were greeted by people, and this one woman came down the pew and started talking to us, and she was asking, "Oh, where are you guys from?" And we said, "Oh, we're just visiting from out of town." And she says, "Oh, so you won't be coming back next week?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, we won't." And then she turned around and left. Okay.
Thanks.
So she was fishing, I guess, and we weren't biting. So
she had a committee role to fill, Curtis.
That's right.
You just weren't going to be available. What about you, Meadow? What's going on up there in the UP? Eh?
When I say that I don't have anything to add, it's just not really to your points. I think there's a lot of reasons why we shouldn't pick that back up, and it stops the awkward, well, we always used to do it, like you said, Pastor Matt. But, we've had such a space there that maybe that's just something that we just leave, that got swept away.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I've, I don't know, you can use whatever terminology you want, stole, borrowed, imitate, but another pastor in the UMC, Tom Arthur, I use something that he does because he usually says, peace friends or whatever at the start, when he's speaking, and then the response is usually peace Tom, so I kind of adapted that with my neighbor thing, and I'll say peace neighbors, and that's kind of a passing of the peace between myself and everyone versus us having to get up and shake hands and say peace be with you, and I think that's part of what makes that stand and greet time awkward for visitors is like, it's like going to a Catholic service. You don't know what to say or do. So it's like somebody says, peace be with you. And you're like,
thanks.
Yeah. Like, all right. Yeah. Nice meeting you. Like, no, you're supposed to say.
They don't even say peace be with you anymore. It's God's spirit. It's something about the spirit, God's spirit be with you or something like that.
Mm.
I like the meme I saw yesterday that said, the Star Wars fan in me wants to say, may the fourth be with you, but the Methodist in me wants to say, and also with you.
Also with you. Yes. Yes.
Well, moving on with our list, the next one, number 7, is an obsession with attendance. And I know this was something that we had discussed that might be something that takes a little bit to get through, but Pastor Matt, where are you with this idea of getting rid of the obsession of attendance?
I am very good about that because on my list of priorities, I always forget to even tell people to fill out the black pews and things like that. I think that there's a better way to take attendance, and that's usually to have somebody that knows what they're doing. Like we've had our sound guy, after things kind of get settled down, or have one of our worship people, when we're kind of gathering in to count, and that's worked very well. if we're trying to get the information, because I think attendance is also, we're hoping that visitors or new people, will fill out the information. But that's where we got to step up our hospitality. They shouldn't even be getting into the sanctuary without a greeter somehow, connecting with them, or having a process where, Kim's our plant, she's one of our plant families, and you should have that. You should have 4 or 5 families that are so, gregarious, and maybe that's not the right word, but just open to, hey, I bring somebody by, they're new, I got to go back to my post, but, they'll kind of tell you what's kind of going on, and you just, hey, how are you doing? Blah, 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 and just give them a place to sit. That should be where we're gathering our information. Because I think that's going to mean a lot more when there's a face-to-face, type of commitment. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm okay with no attendance, or just a quick somebody count from the back or the front during the service. Offering is a great time to do that, whether you're talking about it, because I don't think, I might get to that in a minute, but that's a great time though, when you're talking about it, getting ready to pray, you have a song there that somebody can easily do a quick count, to see how many you have. Because there's no jail for it. If there's 74 people in attendance and you counted 76, so if you counted 71, so, it's just a general idea of what you're working with.
Yep. And I do that. I count from the front because I don't sing in the praise team, and we have it set up now so that the camera is moved towards the praise team. So I'm not on camera during the songs. So I count, and I write down names. So, because that's where we're at right now. We're a small membership church, and if I don't know somebody, then that's a good way of figuring that out. Oh, hey, who is that? So then I can make sure that I connect with them after the service if I hadn't already before the service. But spreadsheet geek that I am, I do then put all of that into a spreadsheet. So I keep track. But I'm wondering, so the article says attendance matters, yes. Counting those in attendance is helpful. Obsessing over how many people show up is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And that I agree with. And I try not to do that. It's hard not to do that, because that's how we, especially as United Methodists, have been brought along, is you have to track this, and it's important, and numbers matter. And
yeah.
So getting away from that obsession with how many people are in the room, been trying to look at who's joining us online, instead of just in the room.
Yeah, I think we're still very much a metrics-based organization. That, I mean, we are required at the end of the year, twice a year, in our charge conference paperwork and in our year-end stats, to enter in a average worship or something like that, both in person and now online. And I think sometimes there is that misunderstanding that bigger is better. That's just not true. I mean, we have all been a part of churches or are serving in churches that, maybe we're only worshiping 40 people, but that church is still doing, good outreach ministry, still faithful, still growing disciples. It doesn't have to be 1,000 people on the weekend for a church to be healthy. And so I think that sometimes is and I think sometimes we're almost slaves to that.
Yes.
Because and it's partially, it's our fault too for coveting what other churches have. And I think we all experienced that about a year ago when we were making this pivot to online too, of being frustrated because we were limited in what we could do, and we were seeing other colleagues in other churches who were, leaps and bounds ahead of us. Mm-hmm. But it comes back to the idea of, some of us were on a call yesterday with a mentorship call of just focusing on your mission, focusing on your vision locally. What are you able to do contextually in your space, in your community, to fulfill the Great Commission there?
Yep.
I think you have to, especially now with online being such a significant part, like you can't get caught up in the numbers thing,
right?
Especially like what I found with Facebook. I mean, their metrics aren't horribly accurate, and it's hard to tell. And then, I mean, like anything, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or what, you're also depending on people clicking things like or actually on the video, when they're watching it to maybe add to your views or likes or whatnot. But I don't think, again, it goes back to the church size too, where it's like, I can't look at a church of 1,000 and be like, well, gosh, why don't we have as many likes as them? Well, their base is bigger than ours, but obsessing over numbers just is a bad thing or a bad rabbit hole to fall down, because of the fact that, as the article said, it's unhealthy. If that's all your focus is on, well, then you're missing, the greater the bigger picture, or, the mission and your vision, because you're too worried about how many people are there or aren't there.
Because we could all do crazy things to get people in the door.
Right.
Just for the sake of numbers.
Yep.
But that's not being true to our call. It's not being true to the mission vision of the church.
Right. So the little church that I'm serving right now, the additional church piece, they have no online presence at all whatsoever, and very small membership, but they're still doing mission. They are so mission minded. So we average about 10 people in worship. And last year they paid 100% of their ministry shares, which were more than $3,000. And they gave over $2,000 in missions to, ranging from local to international. That's just incredible. They're very mission minded. And that's not even counting the in-kind donations they collect. They collect product for Family Promise and the food pantry and all kinds of other things. And they're very mission minded. So I've set out a challenge for them to have a vision outside of just keeping the doors open, because we're trying to figure out where we're going with this church. So what is our vision outside of keeping the doors open? And, it can't be attendance, because the sanctuary is too small. So what is it that matters? And it's not how many people are in the room. So.
Well, I think that's a good segue into this next one, talking about money and giving. Number 8 on this list is big mortgages.
Big mortgages.
I don't, to my knowledge, my church doesn't have a mortgage anymore, but, I think part of what ties in with this one is just the cost of keeping a building open when you don't have that many people attending, like you may have before the pandemic. But I don't know if any of you are dealing with mortgages yet, or.
We are. So our Hope built when they went to this site back in 82, the intention was to have a separate sanctuary. They worshiped in the gym for over 20 years. And then in 2002, 2003, they built the sanctuary, and they had a pretty robust capital campaign. And I can't remember how much it was to build. I want to say around $750. And our mortgage is $135 right now. So it's come way down. I mean, we are attacking it because we know that that's a hindrance to ministry. That $2,700 that we put into the mortgage each month could be used for ministry in so many different ways. So once we get that millstone off of our necks, I'm just waiting for that day. So yeah.
My home church that I came out of, we struggled with that. We struggled with it wasn't so much a mortgage as it was having to pay back, loans for things that we had taken out to do improvements or building improvements. So it's, in essence, it's a mortgage. But I'm thankful that the churches I've served in ministry have not had mortgages, and it's freeing because one, you're upholding a biblical principle of not carrying debt. But also, like Kim just said, it's you don't have to be slave to that payment every month, and it does allow you to kind of focus more on outreach and ministry without knowing that at the end of the month everything's been sucked up in bills.
Right.
So
I think one of the concerns even before the pandemic is, kind of like Kim's situation where a lot of churches fell into this this hole financially where it was like, okay, our numbers were big, so we need to add on. And so then you put these big additions on, but then you're not sustaining the number of people there to continue to support something like that. My home church went through some of that where, we had this huge addition, which was great and made the building that much better or what. But then when your numbers start to decline and your giving goes with it, well, then it's a matter of being able to maintain it, or when you need to do repairs like, replace the roof or whatever, you're in this, like Curtis said, it's like a mortgage because you have these loans that you got to pay on to take care of those repairs because, you didn't have the people to really support a capital campaign to cover those things, or you only got a portion of what you needed. So it's a slippery rope. And now with the pandemic, you've got even less people that are, showing up if you're back in person. And so now it's like, okay, what do we do with these beautiful buildings?
Right. So then you obsess over the numbers again,
Right.
the attendance numbers. Yeah.
It's all a vicious cycle.
It is. It's terrible.
Now, what about Ishpeming? Are you dealing with a mortgage there, Pastor Matt, or no?
No, we don't have any of those things in the past. One of the things I was going to break up is that, it just seems like don't even consider something like that unless you raise half up front.
Right.
Literally and figuratively have your buy-in so people are supporting it then, because if you're supporting raising funds 4 or 5 years before you ever do any big build, they're all in for when that actually happens. They need to continue to do those things. So I think that's good. Plus you're also casting that vision and those kind of things there. I don't want to make it sound too simple, but I mean, why add on? Why not just add another service?
Right.
I mean, you can hold double the amount of people your sanctuary has by just having another service. Give them options, and then you didn't have to improve anything by a dime. And you're accommodating that many more people, and that way you can have a service that's more focused towards younger, older, contemporary, or traditional, or just a different time frame for our early birds or our late people. And it didn't cost a thing, except for maybe your electric or heating bill goes up by a couple dollars. But really, there's
so
just
much
so many
cheaper
reasons.
than a building.
Yeah, there's
Or-
so many reasons for that.
Or
Yeah.
at least have some
Way.
sort of plan B in terms of other usages outside of
Right.
Sunday morning or what, okay, yeah, we could add this, but what else are we going to use it for? Otherwise that might be a determining factor, because it's interesting in some churches when you get into that conversation where it's like, okay, we've got this whole like education wing that's not being used for the majority of the week.
Yeah.
Why not rent it out? Oh no, the idea of letting somebody else into the church, it's like, well, so you want to just keep paying for something that's only being used one day a week.
Right.
Makes sense.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, continuing on this money theme, number 9 on this list is passing the offering plate. Ooh.
Passing those germs down the road.
To pass or not to pass?
I think we should go back to putting a basket on a pole and
Right.
you can throw people over the head with it as if they don't put anything in.
Right. This is one for me that we're not going to go back to. I mean, we have the habit has already been created over the last year. Well, we'll say on and off for a year that we've been back in person.
Yeah.
That the offering plates are outside of the doors. It hasn't impacted our offering. And then with the add-on of online offering, which I would continue to advocate for. I just don't see a reason to and I will say these words carefully, interrupt the service for an offering.
Right.
The offering still is brought up and received, and we sing our doxology and we pray over it. But I just don't know that it needs to go back to that passing it around. So that's just me. But
I offer a prayer during service for the offering, but we have a collection box or whatever. We've got something outside that people can either on their way in or way out drop it in. But I still offer, thanks for those that we received when we weren't in person, and for those that we might receive that day. And certainly, thanking people for the fact that it's their gifts that allow us to continue doing ministry, and without them, it would certainly make a difference. But I don't necessarily see going back to passing around an offering plate.
Mm-mm. No, we have a box in the back as well.
I don't think I want to go back to passing the plates, but I saw something that was really neat when we went outside. And because it was outside, we left it outside for the summer. But we're kind of considering what that might look like as, we start to come back a little bit more in person, is not passing it, but maybe having it available up front or in the back. But I'm a big proponent of music. Mm-hmm. And so it's another way to work in another song. I can say all my things about, hey, we're about ready to take the offering, or for those that come in the mail and online, address all those things. And then a way for people to get up, and go around and drop it in there. So then it turns into we're singing a hymn or a song, and that's a great time to, work in another piece of music, or it's a learning one, because everybody isn't going to get up. It's like one per family, or sometimes you send the kids up, those kind of things. So it gets a little motion going on, but then it turns into, well, everyone stand, so everybody's already standing and that kind of thing. We can move out. And then not only does it give an extra piece of music, but it's that celebration, of offering. And so when it's finished, we roll right into the doxology, but there's a moment where, you get to make that walk, and go up, but there's so many people standing up that nobody's like watching who's walking by the thing. But it also turned into the summer where that was a teaching song. Like, this is when we want to start making part of our regular thing, or it was a theme for the month. And so it was a great moment to sort of introduce that, because it wasn't a full-fledged, there was activity going on. So it was a great way to, hey, we're going to learn how to do this old hymn in a contemporary fashion with guitars. So let's practice this, during the offering for a couple of weeks. So I just submit that there's ways to still have that offering time, but mm-hmm. still not really passing the plate. Right. Just kind of changing it to another opportunity there, or maybe having other things going on there. So I don't think I'm going to go back to passing of the plate, but I'd like to look for some options of just celebrating the offering, even if it doesn't take up that much time. Much to what Curtis said, it's tough because you interrupt. Like, it is part of giving back, but just a moment where it doesn't become, all right, well, thanks for our offering, doxology. Like, it's a celebration of things. Let's really honor God for the provision we had, and trusting him for not only next week, but the weeks ahead, and that needs will be met. So I think as long as there's a celebration, the actual passing of the plates, I think, is something that doesn't really need to come back, because it halts some things that can go a little slow, and you're just dealing with germs that we're going to have to be really aware of for a long, long time, I think.
Right. True. Even pre-pandemic on communion Sundays, I would just have the plates up front. So as people came up to take communion, they could drop their offerings then. So I'd like to go back to at least that. I like what you just described, Matt, and celebrating, because we should celebrate.
I'm thinking maybe just installing card readers on each pew. You don't have to pass anything. You just swipe your card before you sit down, and
entrance fee.
It's basically old school Methodist, right? You're paying for your pew.
Right.
Like a subway. It's a subway thing. You can't get in until you.
Yep. Put a little bar on the end, that doesn't go up until you swipe your card. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Sends a message. It's a subtle message.
Yeah.
You can sit or stand. It's your choice, Well, if we to finish out this top 10 list, the last item on the list was making Sunday morning the entire focus.
I'm going to read what he wrote for this. Here's a fascinating paradox I saw during the lockdown. Congregations that had an empty building from Monday through Saturday did poorly when the Sunday in-person option was no longer available. But churches with busy buildings during the week tended to stay strong and healthy after their buildings were closed. It turns out that while a busy building can be a great sign of a healthy church, it's never the cause of it. A strong weekend service is important, of course, but churches that made Sunday service their entire focus had some hard lessons to learn. Hopefully we've learned from them and will never go back to thinking that a big Sunday morning service is the all or nothing of our churches ever again. And I think that encompasses everything we've been talking about, the passing of the plate and the stand and greet and the obsessing over attendance, and all of that comes down to making Sunday the entire focus of what we're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's an important day, obviously, but you know, it's so important too what happens in the church on Tuesday morning, on Wednesday evening, on Saturday afternoon. It's, you know, because it's those usually during those times, whether it's a recovery meeting, a support group, a Bible study, a youth group, those are where those transformative life experiences in life often happen. Is sometimes it happens on Sunday morning for sure.
Yep.
But it's where those relationships are built and fostered, and where we learn who we are and who God is in those moments during the week, I think.
Yep, I agree. And a friend and I both agree, for our home church, that's what drew us there, was that there was cars in the park. There were, using proper grammar, there were cars in the parking lot nearly every single day of the week. You know, not often on Saturdays, but there were times on Saturdays, but every weekday there were cars in the parking lot and there were things going on. And that was attractive because it wasn't just about Sunday morning.
Yeah, I think if people come on Sunday with the expectation of being fed on Sunday, they're going to starve.
Ooh, that's a good line.
You get fed on Sunday, you
Write
get fed
that down.
during the week. That's kind of, I think, the approach we need to look at is, I get fed, you know, in my Tuesday afternoon Bible study, in my Wednesday night Bible study. Our youth get fed during youth group, not during Sunday morning. On Sunday morning, we're showing people the menu. And then during the week is when they sit down and enjoy the meal together.
Says the former chef.
Yeah.
Show them that menu. Well, and I agree. I mean, it's the fact that, you know, when didn't church become a priority? Or I guess I don't want to use the word church. When did our faith life not, you know, become a priority for so many of our parishioners, you know, where we've put other things in front of it, and then if we have time left, we'll do that. Or because we've decided to put other things in front of our schedule, that Sunday morning is where you better give it to us all. And again, like you said, you're going to go away still hungry because we can't do it all on Sunday.
Right.
You know, there has to be more, but you also have to make it a priority. You can't just, you know, when you feel like it. Kind of hard to get filled up, you know, when you just feel like it.
Right. You know, every now and then on Twitter or Facebook, you know, within different clergy groups, someone will post, you know, how long should you preach? You know, and there's this great debate. Well, it's, you know, if you can't get your message across in 15 minutes, then you're doing something wrong. And other people will say, well, you need to preach for at least 45 minutes and this and that. And I think sometimes that's the mentality of not so much us, but we feel like we have to give them everything on that Sunday morning, and that's just not the approach I take. And I don't think it's the approach you guys take either. I mean, I'm not preaching for 45 minutes. I'm just not going to do it because people they're gonna, you know, I'm going to lose them, and I'm going to lose me. and the people online as well. So, but yet there's some people who, you know, if you're not preaching for 45 minutes, then you're not doing your job. Well,
I
Our
think
entire service is 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I think those people that are preaching 45 minutes, that's all they have to worry about. You
Right.
know, like they have an entire week to focus on a message so they can provide you with 45 minutes of content.
Because
They're not having
focus is
to,
on Sunday morning.
you know, go to all these meetings or, you know, do pastoral care or all those things, you know, so good for them that they've, you know, they can just put their energy into a message from week to week. But
it's almost harder crafting a message that is less than that. I mean, you can just put fluff in and get to 45 minutes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I think it's probably more important that the focus isn't just on Sunday, in a post-pandemic or during, while we're still in the pandemic, because of the fact that people are, I would like to believe that people are looking for something else other than Sunday. But at the same time, there also has to be the acknowledgement that you can't expect the pastor to do it all. Like people still need to step up and be small group leaders or teach a Bible study or, just be willing to host something, even if it's a coffee talk or whatever. But, it's that look at the pastor for all the answers. And it's like, well, I can give you all the answers, but it doesn't mean I'm going to do it all. It's not that I don't love you or that I don't care or that I'm not an effective pastor, but it's just unrealistic to think that I'm going to be able to provide you with all the options off the menu you're looking for during the week. So my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Well, any other thoughts on that last topic of making Sunday morning the entire focus?
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Or get over it. Isn't that the other phrase? Yes.
Yes.
Well, that wraps up the 10 things churches stop during lockdowns that we don't need to restart. And next week we're going to there's one more part to this discussion. There is 6 things that we should do after the pandemic, and we'll be back with that next week to talk about those things.
I'd be curious just to ask: was there something on that list of that we shouldn't do? Was there something that wasn't on that list?
Oh.
Ooh,
that
good question.
That we've stopped doing that didn't make the list that shouldn't come back.
That's a good question.
I stopped doing children's time.
Ooh.
One, because we don't have any kids right now, other than my daughter. But I think, two, my philosophy going back is going to be that when we come back in the fall and start having Sunday school for kids, as soon as they come into church, they're going to be going right to their Sunday school room for a full hour of lesson. I have never been a big fan of the kids moment during worship. I've done it. I did it for 8 years in my previous charge. Just wasn't a fan of it. But
I
it was one of
certainly
those
struggle
things
with
that I held on to, and we did.
I think we need to have a part 4 because you won't be with us next week, right, Curtis?
I will not. I will be.
Okay. I think we should do a part 4 and tackle those things that weren't in the list after we do the things we must get back to. That will give our viewers, not watchers, viewers, subscribers, subscribe to us, Good News Gang, a video ministry, and put in the comments wherever you're watching this, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube. What did we stop that we should not get back to? And alternatively, what should we get back to that we stopped? So that would be the part 4. I think that's because I want to talk more about that.
Well, and that'll give us a chance too to maybe think about some answers ourselves. I think a large part of the list pertains to things that are going on in my church, or that we've stopped since I've arrived. But some of those other things would certainly be interesting to take an opportunity to discuss, because I struggle with the children's message as well. I like kids. I want kids to be in my church, but like right now we don't really have a lot, but I'm, do you or don't you? I guess that's a good thing for us to discuss. Yep. All right. Well, hey, there you have it. Once again, the big issues that we're wrestling with beyond the pulpit or beyond Sunday morning. And hopefully it's encourage you to discuss some of these things in your own households. And, we hope that, you're finding this still interesting, and that you'll come back next week to maybe see what those 6 things are that we should do post-pandemic in our churches. But thank you to my tag team partners, and we miss Pastor Jackie this week, but she'll be back next week. And until next time, peace be with you.